today we got a recurring guest. He's a friend of ours, so much so that we have each other's phone numbers, and he texts us often just to say what's up and then to keep us posted on the reason he came by last time. Tracy, would you like to do the honors?
Yeah, no problem. This is a mighty successful attorney who focuses on trade secret law, entertainment litigation, fintech, so much. But he's also a heart-centered attorney because he devotes a lot of his time to pro bono cases that revolve around criminal justice. And the one that we're highlighting today has to do with a young black man by the name of Pierre Rushing. And Pierre, this is quite the perplexing case, citizens, and we'll give you a summary, we'll remind you of it. But Pierre is behind bars because he was accused and convicted of being a part of a heinous act that involved a shooting. However, Pierre vehemently claims his innocence, and there is piles of evidence to support that innocence. However, he still remains incarcerated. And so last year is when we were introduced to this case, and we felt it was very important to get an update on this because I know that this is a case and a cause that the citizens would support and want details.
Absolutely.
So here to break it down is our friend Jordan Grotzinger.
Jordan!
Tracy Sway, great to see you guys, and thanks for having me back. I can't believe it's been about a year and a half, I think, since I was here.
Yeah.
So as I did last time, I'm going to jump into the Pierre case and give you an update. But one of the striking things that brought me into this space are the statistics on exonerations. And as of today, I gave you guys statistics a year and a half ago.
I remember this.
As of today, since 1989, there have been 3,439 exonerations, which adds up to 31,070 years lost. And so there really is a forgotten population, and a population that tragically is easy to forget about. You know, we all have our day jobs. You guys do this. I sit behind a desk and go to court. But there are people out there who are in prison wrongfully, and it's easy for us to just kind of, oh, that's really terrible, and get on with our day. They don't have that choice. So let me summarize the Rushing case quickly and then give you an update. So Pierre is a 34-year-old black man who was convicted in 2011 for murder, and he's serving 50 years to life.
Wow.
The reason he was convicted is because of one witness. This witness was a 7-time felon, serial crack abuser who was high at the time of the crime, changed his description of Pierre by 6 inches, 100 pounds, and skin color, and identified him 3 weeks late. That was the only witness against him, and there is no physical evidence. The trial court also improperly admitted certain evidence, which a court of appeal later said was improper, but it wasn't improper enough. And so he was convicted. And about 5 or 6 years ago, he had another set of attorneys that filed a habeas petition. 2 additional witnesses came forward who were at the scene and said it wasn't him. One of them actually identified the person that we think the true perpetrator is, and nobody's looked into that. I took this case in early 2022 because of our mutual friend Jason Flom. We all know Jason.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jason.
Been on the show, absolutely.
Who's been on the show and is probably the most well-known activist in this space. And he's got a great podcast called Wrongful Conviction. Pierre was featured on that show, and I listened to it, and I thought, we got to help. We got to help this guy. And my firm, to its credit, has a very robust pro bono program. So we took the case pro bono. As I said, that happened in about early 2022. Since then, and earlier this year, we have come up with 2 new witnesses. One of them was a person who was standing with the perpetrator when the shooting happened. He's doing time for another crime. And he came forward and swore in writing that it wasn't Pierre.
In writing?
In writing.
Written statement?
Yes.
Okay.
And then on Super Bowl weekend of this past year, we have a great investigator named Grant Fine, and he's been looking for the one witness who identified Pierre because we thought we had many reasons to think that he might come around and tell the truth, and that he was under some pressure 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, when he gave that testimony. He pops up in county jail on Super Bowl weekend this past year, and my investigator goes and interviews him, and he completely recants his testimony against Pierre and signs a written statement saying that I'm coming clean to correct an injustice. It wasn't him, despite my testimony. And the investigator, who is a professional, I mean, this is a guy he's a Harvard Law School graduate, actually in the same class as Obama and Justice Gorsuch. He's got a soft touch, and he's a pro. And, he said to this witness, "Thank you, but why are you doing this?" And he said, effectively, he said, "Well, I remember when I was shown the photo lineup, I recognized one guy who was my friend. I didn't want to talk to him. I recognized this other guy, Rushing, who sort of looked familiar from around the neighborhood, but I didn't know him. So I pointed to him because I figured the police would come down on me." And at this time, when he was interviewed, he was stone sober because he'd been in lockup for a couple of days, I understand, completely lucid and cooperative. So in March of this year, we filed a new habeas petition. We're still in the thick of it. These cases, as you know, take many years. You might have seen yesterday someone was exonerated after 20, 30 years. Yeah. They just take forever and go up and down in the courts. So we filed a habeas petition, and the trial court, not too surprisingly, as I'm coming to understand, denied it on the primary ground that, Mr. Rushing knew who these witnesses were all along. Well, that obviously doesn't make sense for a couple of reasons. Number one, the person who was on the scene with the shooter, who came forward first, a prior set of attorneys for Mr. Rushing had tried to reach him and see if he would talk, and he refused. And so the logical conclusion of this ruling is that an indigent prisoner has to regularly check with a reluctant witness to see if they've changed their mind. There's obviously no law that says that. And of course, the sole witness, he was the one who identified Rushing in the first place. So what's he supposed to do? Yeah. The week after the conviction, he's supposed to, hey, can I make a call to this witness and see if he changed his mind? So we have put a star appellate team together. Okay. And we're going to run this up the appellate flagpole. But in the meantime, what we're trying to do is schedule a meeting with the district attorney of Alameda County, because if she just assigns a deputy and an investigator to go interview these two witnesses themselves and see for themselves, she might be persuaded that, we'll join this petition. Because a DA doesn't have the power to, snap the prison doors open. A judge has to do that. But it helps if the DA is on your side. Now, this district attorney is named Pamela Price. She came into office in January, and she holds herself out as a reformer. Someone who is interested in wrongful convictions and civil rights. And so, I'm not, as I tell my civil clients, I'm not big on press, media. I don't think it advances the ball in civil cases most of the time. But here, I feel like we should be on the same team. We are on team justice. We are on team truth. And the objective facts are, you've got a case where there is nobody left to testify against this man. Nobody today will swear that he did it, whereas 5 people from trial through post-conviction, not including him, will swear that he didn't, and there is no other evidence. So I'm biased. I'm an advocate. I'm his lawyer. But to any objective person, should a man like that be in prison, and even if you think, that's the process and a jury decided that, even if you think that, with those facts, my question is this to everybody listening and to Ms. Price. Is it worth a couple of hours for a deputy and an investigator to drive down the road and talk to these people?
Yeah.
We are on team justice. We should be on the same team here. So please see for yourself. I believe that Ms. Price is a reformer. I believe that she wants to find the truth. And to be totally transparent, I'm a little uncomfortable. I don't, I hope this interview doesn't rub her the wrong way or trigger her. And I understand how it could, because she's got a job to do. There are politics involved, unfortunately. But I also have a duty to maybe create a little discomfort and raise awareness for this kind of thing, because it's not a big ask. Right. I'm asking for a couple of hours because the objective probability is that this man is innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Man, first of all, thank you for your fight for justice. Yes. But we appreciate it. This man doesn't get paid to do this necessarily, and you've been really adamant in this case with Pierre. And Pierre is from the Bay Area, correct?
Yes.
What city is he from?
Oakland.
He's from the same place I'm from, and it's been often I've seen innocent people from Oakland with evidence on their side remain in jail. What is the benefit of that? Why wouldn't someone want to seek out the justice on this behalf if all of these facts are lining up like you're saying?
I don't have the answer. As I alluded at the top of this conversation, there is an inertia that sets in for some reason. I don't understand. I'm not a psychologist. This is not my day job. I do pro bono cases because it's a labor of love, not because I get paid to do it.
Okay.
But you talk to Jason and you see the same thing, even with good DAs, even with progressive DAs. And by the way, I don't fit into boxes. I'm a law and order person, but I'm a justice person.
Yeah.
And so I don't.
You don't have an answer for that.
I don't have an answer.
Okay.
I do want to read a quote of a very important person before we stop that I think addresses that inertia.
Before we do that,
yeah,
because I know he only has so much time, we actually have your client, Pierre Rushing. Mm-hmm. He's actually on the phone with us right now. Pierre, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, Pierre.
Man, what's going on? Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Sway. Good morning, Tracy. Good morning,
Pierre Rushing on this line. How are you holding up? It's been since 2011, but what's keeping you inspired? What's keeping you motivated?
Man, hope for justice. But before I get started, 'cause I know we're on time. I just want to thank you, Sway, for being a hip hop pillar and a staple in the community. And thank you for giving me this platform again. But as far as me, like I'm fighting. Like Jordan keeps me fighting, and we're just hoping for justice.
What kind of ways have you been able to adapt, knowing you're an innocent man and you unjustly are behind bars? What kind of things do you do personally to keep you going? Do you meditate? Are you exercising? Are you reading? What sort of things you do for personal care?
The first part of that question, there is no adapting. I believe majority of the dudes that's walking around here that are also wrongfully convicted are not getting the kind of push that they need because they are adopting and they are adapting. As far as keeping my mind safe and keeping me constantly growing up, I'm constantly working out. I'm constantly reading. I read over 500 books a year, and I'm constantly fighting. Like my first 3 years, I never really even went to the yard. I just always was in a law library, reaching out to the Innocence Project. Shout out to Linda Starr. She's the director of the Innocence Project in California. Reaching out to different people like Jason Flan, reaching out to just anybody that would listen to me. I reached out to Pamela Price, the current district attorney, when she was a civil rights attorney, before she was a district attorney. I've written everybody.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, Pierre, my goodness, I'm glad that you were able to call up and speak to us because it adds to this to actually hear your voice and your story. And I hate that anyone who is behind bars, you get painted in a very one-dimensional way. And once there is the title...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Yeah. Well, this is real.
Exactly.
Right.
This is not theater, citizens at all. But Pierre, I feel like it's also important for you. I would love for you to share a bit more of your humanity, who you are outside of this, what interests that you have. Like when it comes to your dreams still, I'm going to speak it into existence when you're on the other side. How would you like to spend your life?
Well, I just want to first answer the humanity part. as I've told Sway before the last time we talked, I've participated in food drives from behind prison. And what I mean by food drives is shout out to Mr. Fab. Mr. Fab runs turkey drives and toy drives around this time every year. I think he's on like his 17th year. I've contributed to that 2 years within the last 4. I think last year in the holiday season I was in AdSeg. I've done my own toy drives with Dominique Cleo in San Francisco. I've just never let it just put me down, and people know that I've done it. I've also been doing music since I've been incarcerated. Never letting this situation take my dreams away from me. Shout out Gazi. Gazi gave one of my family members for me a label deal to distribute my music.
Wow.
Gazi,
You know what I mean?
Gazi runs Empire Records, local distribution platform out of the Bay Area. He's given thousands of people chances like this. Really great guy.
Yes. Really, shout out Gazi, shout out Opportunity, shout out Royce for making that happen. But it just never stops. And if you believe it, then you can achieve it. And I know I'm not going to spend 50 years. I'm not going to die in prison. I know I'll be home very shortly. So I had to put in the work as if I was going to be home very shortly. And that's what I'm continuing to do.
All right. Pierre, man, I appreciate you even taking this time. I know you only have so much time, right? Did you want to say anything to Pierre?
Pierre, I'm glad to hear your voice. I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to know that other people are hearing your voice now. And speaking of books, I don't think the books I've sent you have arrived yet, but I'm going to plan a visit soon. And if you don't get them, I'll buy new copies and bring them myself.
Yes, sir.
Mike Muse, you want to jump in?
Yeah, just Jordan, I'm just curious, like, what is the biggest obstacle for you right now in getting Pierre brought home?
I think the biggest obstacle is the lack of engagement from the DA's office. I think that, like I said, if they would just invest a little bit of time, and primarily right now, interview those 2 witnesses themselves. Don't take my word for it. I think they would come around, or at least be willing to search a little harder for the truth because of the objective facts. And again, I say that somewhat reluctantly because I'm trying to get a meeting.
Are they just unresponsive? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Are they unresponsive?
It's that inertia. And look, I know they're really busy too, and they're following a process and they're doing their jobs, and I respect them. But with the facts here, and we've got these 2 witnesses teed up who, as of today, are reachable. I mean, both are behind bars. So you can go talk to them. And that's all I ask. And, to that point, the deputy in charge initially seemed to be interested in interviewing them, but then they just filed an opposition and the judge just went with it because that's what happens in these cases. It is moving of mountains. And it's why it takes so many years. So that's probably the biggest obstacle, with all due respect to the DA's office. I'm just trying to be transparent and get that meeting and get them to spend a couple of hours interviewing these witnesses. And if they're satisfied, great. This will start moving in the right direction. If they're not, we'll keep litigating and see where this lands. But I would like some cooperation because, again, I think we should be on the same team here.
Is there something that we, the public, can do that would help move this along or bring this attention to the DA?
I think you're doing it. I think people will hear this. I think that DA Price will hear this. If people want to try to get in touch with the DA's office, it's pretty easy to figure out how. Okay. Walking that fine line, I'm not going to sit here today and tell everybody to bomb the telephones.
Right.
Because, again, I want to be respectful. At the same time,
True.
I need to light a little bit of a fire because I've got a client who I believe is innocent and who I believe most people would think, this at least deserves a little more investigation. So to your question, I think you're doing it. And not just related to Pierre, but as you guys know from my last appearance, talking about this stuff can sometimes inspire other people, other lawyers to get involved that otherwise wouldn't have known about this forgotten population.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pull up a caller. Pierre, you still got a few seconds?
Yeah. Because I just want to interject before the phone hangs up. I want to just make a call to action, if I can, Sway.
Yes.
And I just personally want to just ask, and particularly the nation, to ask Pamela Price if they believe this guy did it or is guilty. And I'm not saying she believes it or not, but what guilty guy is going to tell you DNA test the vehicle? This vehicle was immediately detained after the murder. And there's cigarette butts, there's headrest seats, there's all type of stuff in this car. And the courts will not let us DNA test the car. I don't think nobody speaks on that enough. Majority of wrongfully convicted guys are exonerated through DNA testing, and they will not let us DNA test the vehicle. That is still material is still in Oakland Police Department's custody. They still have it right now to this day. They have 27 fingerprints out of the car as soon as the car was detained. None of those fingerprints match mine. And the guy, Robert Green, says, hey, he killed the guy without any gloves on. 27 fingerprints. Like, wow. I'm just asking Pamela Price, like, just please, like, I got to be respectful. Jordan has asked me to be respectful. I'm asking Pamela Price, if you hear this, please look at the case, please.
Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you, Pierre.
God bless you, Pierre. Sending love and prayers out to you. This is Heather. Sending love and prayers out to you and your family, because it has to be tough, especially when you know you didn't do anything wrong. So just if I could personally offer anything, just prayers to you, brother. Hold your head.
Thank you.
Very welcome, Pierre. And then I'll look into Ghazi to see what you guys, your family, has been able to do with the platform, and we'll support whatever you guys do through that platform here on my show. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Pierre Rushing, man.
Pierre Rushing.
Hold your head, brother.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Hold your head.
I appreciate it, Sway. I appreciate it, Tracy. I know you reached out to Jordan. Thank you. I appreciate Jason Flom, Lori Rothschild, Mr. Fab, anybody that has been there. I know everybody got their life. Everybody's busy. But if you just took 5 minutes out and I didn't mention your name, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
You're welcome.
Hey,
you're
man,
welcome.
And send our strength and support to the family you got in there as well, all right?
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
My man,
Just
Pierre Rushing.
Reminder.
Just another reminder.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
Well, how much time we have left?
What's next?
What's next? Okay. I wanna read a quote that struck me. A lot of bad stuff is going on in the world, but this applies to that indifference and inertia that I was talking about. And it's something that I think everybody has to deliberately try to fight, because, as I said, it's so easy. You know, John and I, after this, we'll go out to breakfast and I'll go to work and my life will go on. Your life will go on.
Yeah.
And it's easy not to forget, but to just sort of put these folks aside and get on with your day. So I want to read a profound quote, if I may. Of course, indifference can be tempting. More than that, seductive. It is so much easier to look away from victims. It is so much easier to avoid such rude interruptions to our work, our dreams, our hopes. It is, after all, awkward, troublesome to be involved in another person's pain or despair. Yet for the person who is indifferent, his or her neighbor are of no consequence, and therefore their lives are meaningless. Their hidden or even visible anguish is of no interest. That was said by Elie Wiesel on April 12th, 1999 at the White House. So don't be indifferent. Talk about it. Thank you for giving us this platform and maybe inspiring just one person to get involved and give another person like Pierre hope.
Amen.
Hang out with us for a second. 888-742-3345. If you have questions about the case of Pierre Rushing or any other question, we got Jordan Grotzinger here. Hang out for a second. Sway in the Morning, Shade 4-5. Jordan Grotzinger has joined us, Tracy G, and we're talking about the case of Pierre Rushing, who was convicted
Yeah. This
Wrongfully.
goes back.
Wrongfully convicted
Yeah.
in 2011.
Exactly. And he is from Oakland. It's been said that he was involved in a shooting. But as we've been going over this morning, there's so much evidence that speaks to the complete opposite. Very complicated, but we have his attorney, Jordan Grotzinger, here with us.
It seems to me, after listening to everything that Jordan presented and listening to Pierre today, I would be very slow, too, to respond in some cases, no matter what state I was in, especially if evidence would prove that I was wrong. You know, it makes the police department, it makes everybody look really, really bad, that all of these cases keep popping up and so many people are innocent.
I see what you're saying.
I would be slow to respond. I would maybe exonerate maybe one person a year and just say it took a long time to get this makes so many people look bad just based on what you presented today in 15 minutes. That's just me. And now it makes sense to me why it takes so long, why people sit in prison for 11 years, for 5 years, for 10 years, because it kind of like bucks the whole, exposes everybody. That's just my opinion.
Mike Muse, when you listen to this case, and you created a very reputable, efficient program called Vote Quadrant, right? And when you listen to this case, can you break that down for Jordan? What Vote Quadrant is all about, and how could, by doing that, you could possibly put different people in position that when cases like this pop up, it could get the type of attention it needs by voting the right people in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, citizens, what Sway is referencing to, some of you are familiar with it, is Vote Quadrant. So, a strategic voting system that does exactly what the problem is right now, is to eradicate and reform criminal justice. We always talk about it from this very broad stroke and broad scope, but we never know how to specifically target it in order to make change. Like, this is on a micro level. It's such a macro level because criminal justice is so all-encompassing. It's prison, it's a bail bond system, it's bail, it's the whole thing. And so what I've done is, in order to eliminate a process of that, is to figure out how to vote strategically. The initial intent was to stop police brutality, but this goes into the case to what Jordan is talking about. One, we never really think about a police chief, and a police chief cannot be elected, but a police chief is appointed. So now when we have mayoral candidates, if you care about this issue, you have to ask the candidates who are running for mayors in your city as if they are running for police chief. You have to be that type of single issue voter. And so when you go to these town halls and when you have the opportunity to question them, you say, if elected to mayor of this city, what type of police chief would you appoint? What would you want to see? The structure of the police department? How do you reimagine policing? Ask those type of questions. That's number one. The second thing to which I asked Jordan about is, like, what was the biggest obstruction going forward in assisting Pierre? And he mentioned the district attorney. A district attorney is voted on. And so oftentimes we don't either pay attention to local elections, we only care about the president, and we think the Oval Office can solve everything, and or we just skip that line altogether. And we also, too, allow these district attorneys to go unchecked. And so when district attorneys are running, you ask them questions. How do you think about cases? How do you go about prosecuting? What is your relationship to police? Because the district attorney's office and the police department share a symbiotic relationship. And oftentimes they don't want to go against police departments in fear of they won't be able to get evidence that's needed to build their cases and to prosecute their cases. And then from there, you would say, and then in this particular case in Pierre, how would you look at opening appeals, right? And what would that process look like? And then the last part of the Vote Quadrant, because it's 4, is the judges. That's another piece that we completely ignore when it comes to one of local elections, general elections. By the time, if we are voting, by the time we get down from the top of the line candidate all the way down to the bottom, you're like, I never heard of this person. I never know these people. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and or we leave it off. And so as a result, you get judges who are sitting on benches who don't care about who is coming in front of them often. They have no connectivity. They don't understand the whereabouts. Now, judges, when judges are running, you can't ask them how would they rule on the case because they have to look at the evidence that's presented for them at the time. So you need to ask them questions about like their lived experience, their background, where they grow up, like what books are they reading, what music are they listening to, what trips have they taken lately, what community service do they do, to really begin to build a biographical picture and portrait of this judge, and then you can make your decisions accordingly. And based upon the conversation I've heard so far between Jordan and Tracy and Pierre, it seems like Pierre's case had touch points with each one of those quadrants, with the exception of the mayor, but by indirect with the mayor because he appointed the police chief, the police force looking at the evidence and the data, actually going against the district attorney and determining how they decided to prosecute within their office, and then the judge in terms of how the judge ruled in favor of this. And in particular, an important part of the judge, too, that we overlooked is that the judge has the ability to issue jury instructions. And so that has a big weight on the way the case is swayed. And so that's how the vote quadrant voting system can help prevent situations like Pierre going forward, people who are the Pierres going forward, preventing them from being wrongfully accused and having to sit in prison for an undue time of over 10, 15 years, it sounds like.
Right. And you wanted to comment, Jordan?
Local voting is absolutely important, but, to Heather's point about, and I think you were saying if you were on the government side, you would be slow, right? Because it's so complicated and you're opening just a massive can of worms.
Yes.
Here, we have a progressive DA. You have the kind of DA on paper. You've got the kind of DA that you would elect if you go through all the exercises that you just described, Mike, and still that inertia persists because, to Heather's point, the reality is, it's not like when a new administration comes in, the whole building's cleaned out and everybody is of the same mind and politics, although I shouldn't have said that because this isn't political. It's not about tough on crime or soft on crime. This is an innocence case. So I don't care if you're the toughest on crime DA in the world, you should look at innocence cases. But the reality is, even if you have a progressive DA, you've got DAs who worked on this case that are down the proverbial hall who you've got to make really uncomfortable when you dig into this. And so I think that I don't know because I'm not there.
With that being said, I don't know if this particular DA was a district attorney at the time of Pierre's case, but if this is it sounds like she wasn't, right? So that's number one. It sounds like number two, if this DA is having an issue, there is the power of voting to vote this DA out. The DA office, when you are becoming district attorney, is not a lifetime appointment. So every 4 years, this person can be voted out. And so if this person, just because they're progressive, doesn't mean that they're going to side with cases. Doesn't mean they're doing their job adequately. So this district attorney is not doing their job, then whoever is interested in this community, in this city, in this particular case, needs to advocate to make sure that this person doesn't remain in office for the inadequacies based upon the information I'm hearing or how people believe that maybe this district attorney is not adequate enough. During the election cycle, when this person is up for re-election, you can say, based upon these 5, 10, 15 cases, the district attorney has been non-responsive. We, the people of this community, don't feel like this district attorney is serving us and or upholding to their campaign promises, as you see. On the flip side, since you mentioned progressive, if you look at Attorney General Keith Ellis of Minnesota, the reason why the officers who murdered George Floyd was convicted because of the vote quadrant system. What happened was there was a county district attorney who had no interest in prosecuting the George Floyd police officers because he felt at the time that there was not enough evidence to be had. What the mayor then came in and said, no, there is seemingly enough evidence to move forward with an investigation. And then they partnered with the governor of the state, who then appointed the state attorney general, who was elected, Keith Ellison, by the people of Minnesota. So then Keith Ellison became the special prosecutor in order to bring forward that case. So in that instance, you had a mayor that was elected who said there was enough evidence here. You had a county district attorney who has, I think, since then been voted out, but he was in that position for over 15, 20 years, comfortable right? But the status quo, because people wasn't aware, wasn't paying attention to what was happening, and so allow this individual to have the seat. But then the people in Minnesota voted for Keith Ellison, the state attorney general, who said, I am willing, based upon the evidence that I'm seeing, to go forward with this prosecution. So you had the governor who you voted for, the mayor who you voted for in Minnesota, the district attorney the state attorney who you voted for, attorney general, all move forward in order to then move forward with an indictment and then a prosecution that rendered a guilty verdict for these individuals. And then we also look at the sentencing from the judge's perspective. So that's a case of a progressive district attorney where we saw justice was actually done. And then we also, too, saw that in a number of cases that happened in the state of Georgia with the individual who was murdered. Unfortunately, there have been so many names of individuals who have been murdered. I can't remember them all. But there was a situation in Atlanta with the former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Bottoms, Lance Bottoms, who moved forward to make sure there was a prosecution. They worked together with that attorney. You look at what's happening right now in Fulton County with that attorney who's going after former President Trump right now. She was voted in. And so these are cases in action where this voting system seems to work. So if this district attorney isn't doing her job, then it's up to the community and to the residents to build a grassroots movement in order to make sure that this individual doesn't remain in office. If this individual is being inadequate. And I don't know the story in the cases, but this is just how it gets done.
Have you seen that type of activity with the community that have stepped forward and asked for justice?
Not really, you know.
Or at least to look at the case again, right?
Yeah. Well, we've been able to, lucky for you, we've got platforms like this to speak about it. There haven't really been rallies or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've talked about this case on other shows like The Breakfast Club and with a local radio host named Kat Brooks. And again, I think part of it is a function of we only want to be involved with something that works. I don't know. The DA is going to respond to what the court does. She can help by investigating like I described, but I don't know if a rally, outside the DA's office is really going to move the needle. It could be counterproductive. But I think the more people are aware of this, it can only help.
Jordan Grotzinger, give this man a round of applause for the work you do. We appreciate you. It's been a year and a half since we saw you, and got a chance to meet your son, John, student over at the University of Miami, but he's serious about his education, just to let y'all know.
Oh, you said that because he's in Miami?
He's in Miami. And look at him, man. He's wearing clothes today, but he probably walks around half-dressed, I'm sure. But send our love to Pierre.
Yes.
And we will continue to support you in this. Okay?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Jordan Grotzinger, man, big round of applause for him. People want to reach you because you got a lot of callers. Walter from VA, Leanne from North Carolina, Adrian Walker from the 650. I think that's Northern California. That is Northern California. Wilson Centrell, an 862. I don't know what area code that is. But if people want to reach you, how can they reach you directly?
Social is at Jordan Grotzinger on Instagram and at J Grotzinger on X. You can DM me.
All right, Grotzinger.
And you have a podcast too, right?
Yes, on trade secret law. Very different subject.
Trade secret law?
Trade secret law. So if you listen, I'll just warn everybody, have a good amount of caffeine and, stay off the road.